All right, I guess we'll start. Okay, let me just get that off. All right, thank you, everybody. This is the January 2023, January 18th meeting of the Landmark Land Use Committee for Community Board 2. And I'll introduce Karen Johnson is taking the minutes again as usual. And thank you very much, Karen, for your help on this. It's we know you were very busy. Our co-chair is Daughtry Christophin. I guess Daughtry's someplace. I don't have all the, but I guess Daughtry's there somewhere.
Yeah, I'm here. Hello, everyone.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Yeah. I don't have all the little boxes on my thing. So, but okay. Was glad to see you there. Okay. Very good. Daughtry's very busy, and thanks for your help and some of your ideas that you have. So we thank you for that. Okay. If there's no objection, I'd like to adopt the agenda for tonight's meeting. Hearing no objection, the agenda for tonight's meeting has been adopted. Thank you. Next will be the minutes. If there's no objection, we'd like to have the minutes that Karen did for the December 2022 meeting be adopted. If there's no objection, I hear no objection, the minutes have been adopted. Next, we have to ask the non-board people who are not on the committee or not on the board from the public, if they have any, I guess, comments or questions or ideas on the agenda. I'll give it a moment to see if there's anyone who's not on the committee, who's not on the board, members of the public who wish to speak about the agenda. Okay. Hearing none. Okay, we'll just move right on to tonight's topic. Now, it's not we're not having a decision. Okay, so there's no voting on this, but it's a presentation from the Department of City Planning about, they call it EDS and MEDS, as they call it. Now, at first I thought it was a new television show about doctors, at medical school, but it actually turns out that this is a proposed, I guess, possible proposed ideas concerning both the two big neighboring institutions right in the middle of downtown Brooklyn, Long Island University and the Brooklyn Hospital Center. And as I think some of you know, they face, I guess, one side from Long Island University faces the other on the Brooklyn Hospital Center. And there's ideas of how those two institutions can start to cooperate and do, let's say, some kind of joint ideas and joint programming, which would be of benefit for the community and for people here in, especially in our district. And it'll be a big benefit, and maybe even provide jobs and work and other entities as well. So this is a presentation by the Department of City Planning. These are the people who will be reading it. Alex, from the Department of City Planning, Alex Sommer, Amitha Manesh, Sam Golan, and Connie Chun. I hope I pronounced names properly, and I probably mangled it. But okay, the City Planning, you can take it away. This is your presentation.
Thank you so much for the introduction. Thank you, and thank you so much for having us tonight. My name is Alex Sommer. I'm the director of the Brooklyn office at the Department of City Planning. I know some of you from work in the neighborhood. Also joined by Amrita Mahesh, who you may know as the liaison to Community District Community Board 2, covering Community District 2, and has been leading this work on eds and meds for this area. Also joined by Connie Chan and Bianca Bryant tonight. They're also from the Department of City Planning, and we'll be taking notes and also supporting if there's any questions we can respond to. And as was stated earlier, this is about developing a framework for the Long Island University and Brooklyn Hospital Center campus, as well as doing some planning work for the surrounding part of that neighborhood. Marissa will go into a detailed discussion about where we are in the process. We're still in the early stages, but we really wanted to take this opportunity to do some thoughtful planning with Community Board 2, as well as other stakeholders in the area, and think through the implications and benefits that could be derived from these two large anchor institutions in downtown Brooklyn moving forward with redevelopment on the campus. So supporting the main anchor institutions of medical and educational facilities, but also expanding those facilities and providing additional housing opportunity, retail, office, medical, and educational uses there. So with that, I'll pass it over to Amrita, who has a presentation to go through, and we'll definitely have some opportunity for Q&A at the end, and looking forward to that. So thank you, Amrita.
Thank you, Alex. Just give me one moment. Let me just pull up my presentation. All right, can everyone see my screen? Great.
Yes, we can.
Thank you. As Alex noted, this work is really centered around the growth of these two anchor institutions in downtown Brooklyn, Long Island University and the Brooklyn Hospital Center. In anticipation of the possible growth at these two campuses, DCP is looking to lead a proactive planning effort to help shape their development plans that are happening now and future growth that may come. The LIU and Brooklyn Hospital campuses, as you may all know, are located between the Flatbush Avenue extension and Fort Greene Park, right across from each other. Their long-term plans to grow have the potential to be very impactful, and not only for them, but for the surrounding area as well. And because both of these institutions are developing their visions in a similar time frame, it's a great time for the city as well to think comprehensively about these two campuses and consider their growth in the context of planning objectives for the greater downtown Brooklyn area, including the Central Business District and surrounding NYCHA public housing communities, as well as the neighboring job centers, Dumbo and the Brooklyn Navy Yard as well. This past November, we met with CB2's executive committee to introduce this work and get some early feedback from multiple committee chairs. I'll briefly summarize what we shared at this meeting, but we do have these slides in the appendix and can pull them up after the presentation if questions come up. At the last meeting, we spent some time talking about the downtown Brooklyn CBD's importance at the borough and city level, shared some high-level data on jobs, housing and affordable housing creation in the last few decades, recent growth and market trends within downtown Brooklyn institutions, existing conditions at the LIU and Brooklyn Hospital campuses, and finally, we shared a summary of the planning goals for this near-term framework deliverable in the anticipated timeline. Today's meeting, we're looking to walk through more details about some of these aspects and dive into some of the focus areas and the planning topics that we are looking to kind of explore further with you all. So this is a sort of a zoomed out view of the two campuses, putting them in the context of the broader neighborhood. And as you can see here, there's a pretty stark contrast between the west side of Flatbush Avenue and the east side of Flatbush Avenue near both campuses. On the west side, we've seen a lot of growth in housing and job opportunities and services. And on the east side, there has not been as much development. And this sort of existing condition is also largely because of the existing zoning here, which dates back to the 1960s. And while the existing zoning does allow for some incremental growth, which LIU has been taking advantage of, which you may have seen, there has been some as of right growth on their campus. It doesn't quite match the long-term needs of these two campuses to modernize their buildings and expand their services. The anticipated campus redevelopment plans will provide the opportunity to really align the land use and the zoning to meet the needs of these institutions, but also make sure that they are integrated with the rest of downtown Brooklyn. This is a map of the existing built conditions at the two campuses. The two campuses together are roughly the equivalent of 4 city blocks. That's nearly 15 acres total. The sites have multiple important frontages, Flatbush Avenue and University Place to the west, Willoughby Street to the north, DeKalb Avenue to the south, and Fort Greene Park on the easternmost edge. Ashland Place is a north-south corridor that divides the two campuses. Recently, LIU completed an as-of-right development project, which has a residential tower, and they reconstructed an athletic field to meet NCAA standards with a parking garage beneath the field. At the LIU campus, in the near term, plans have also been filed for an additional as-of-right project along the DeKalb Avenue frontage. Again, as we mentioned earlier, the two sites are roughly 4 full city blocks, and this scale is, at this scale, expansion plans could be very transformative and impactful for the broader neighborhood. And we feel that this calls for a coordinated approach for the two campuses that accounts for their visions, but also considers them in the context of the planning needs for the neighborhood more broadly. To that end, the Department of City Planning is looking to put forth a planning framework in the near term to inform and shape the expected growth on the east side of Flatbush Avenue. Some of the overarching objectives of the framework include helping these two institutions grow by informing their investments in new and expanded facilities, services, programs, and jobs, continuing to strengthen the downtown Brooklyn Central Business District, and providing guidance for private development proposals as well as public investments in the neighborhood, building on recovery efforts and better connecting Brooklyn residents to jobs in the district. The framework recommendations are really meant to inform planning work that we are doing now in advance of these private proposals and our continued work with partner agencies as well, and the proactive planning that we're really hoping to do at this stage. Over the past few months, we've begun working with the agencies listed on this slide. As we start to develop recommendations for the framework, we are soliciting feedback from our partner agencies as well, and we will continue this coordination even after the release of the framework to really advance the planning objectives that we'll speak to in greater detail today. For this framework, we don't have a defined boundary for a study area per se, but we have instead identified a few different focus areas on a few different scales. So I just want to spend a minute talking about that. First is the areas east of Flatbush Avenue and along what we're calling the Ashland Place Navy Street corridor, which connects some important neighborhood nodes from Atlantic Terminal in the south, the Cultural District, and all the way up to the Navy Yard to the north. We will be looking in particular at the areas around the LIU and Brooklyn Hospital campuses, as well as the 3 public housing communities. Simultaneously, we're thinking about the needs in the downtown Brooklyn core area, which is essentially similar in geography to the special district. We are thinking about the greater downtown Brooklyn Central Business District as well, which includes other important job hubs in this ecosystem, such as Dumbo and the Brooklyn Navy Yard. And lastly, we are also making sure to consider downtown Brooklyn's regional significance. It is one of only a few really strong secondary job centers in the New York metro region. And the Central Business District's position in the city and the region is a really important consideration for us to inform forward-looking planning goals. We are looking to include both place-based recommendations that are meant for specific sites or areas, but also a thematic and programmatic recommendations that are broader and touch on other neighborhood needs. These framework recommendations will include land use and urban design principles, which will focus more so on the LIU and Brooklyn Hospital campuses and surrounding blocks, but we're also keeping in mind the larger extent of the neighborhood when it comes to other topics such as city-owned sites and opportunities there, public realm and transit needs, strengthening connections to NYCHA communities, and current and future infrastructure, public health, housing and affordable housing, and jobs needs as well. We'd like to use the meeting today to walk through our preliminary goals for some of these topics, and we welcome your feedback on all these aspects and what might be missing as well. The framework will include land use and urban design principles to guide future development proposals and site planning. The principles will address coordination needs across the two sites and also include recommendations for improving connectivity in the public realm. The principles will speak to how the two sites are situated within the context of the larger neighborhood. We've started to identify some important east-west corridors shown here in yellow and north-south corridors shown here in blue. We want to be mindful of the characteristics of each of these key streets and the role that they play in the broader public realm network, and ensure that the planned developments are responsive to these frontages. Flatbush Avenue is a major thoroughfare where we want to look at ways in which future developments can enliven that frontage. On Willoughby Street, DeKalb Avenue, and Ashton Place, we're exploring ways to enhance the overall streetscape experience and how buildings can meet the street. Fort Greene Park on the easternmost edge is a frontage that is of particular importance and needs to be thoughtfully planned. There are some steep grade changes here that need to be carefully evaluated in future plans as well. Willoughby Street offers views to the Prison Ship Monument, which is an important feature of this landmark park, and the principles will speak to how future developments should consider and respond to these important, unique site-specific conditions. The image on the left shows the existing conditions and highlights this interface with the park. We've also included some historic images of the park that show the western edge condition. We are coordinating closely with the Parks Department and other partner agencies to plan for this prominent frontage. The next topic we are investigating is opportunities on city-owned properties to facilitate public realm improvements, affordable housing, as well as job space. To the left, we have the example of University Place, which is a key city-owned asset proximate to the campuses. We recognize that this site was also flagged in the community board's latest priorities and requests in the district needs statement as well. We are looking to work with the Parks Department and LIU to create a world-class gateway with attention to how future developments can be designed along the Flatbush Avenue frontage. The next topic we are investigating is also looking at public realm related recommendation for areas surrounding the campuses and the broader neighborhood. We would like to explore potential improvements together with DOT for this portion of Fleet Place. This segment provides access to the DeKalb Avenue subway station and the Department of Health clinic as well. So we want to take a comprehensive look at possibilities for improvement along this entire frontage, including University Place. Sorry, one moment. And this slide shows the Ashton Navy corridor, which is one that I had referenced earlier, and our goals for identifying potential public realm improvements along here that respond to the future growth that is anticipated on the east side of Flatbush Avenue. There are a few particular conditions that we want to keep in mind. The sidewalk experience and circulation, the east-west connectivity and existing conditions at that portion of Navy Street next to the NYCHA communities. This corridor also has some interesting street grid conditions and turns, so thinking about safety considerations there and how people move, as well as the needs of multiple users and various modes that include bikes, pedestrians, and vehicles, etc. This is a quick overview of an active DOT project, which is planned for implementation in 2023 that the board may be familiar with. This project will add protected bike lanes, as seen in the image to the left. We're looking to bolster these ongoing planning efforts and continue to study future improvements and opportunities together with DOT. In addition, DOT has also put forth a pedestrian mobility plan, which is a citywide framework to guide the design of streets and sidewalks for pedestrians. The downtown Brooklyn Central Business District has been identified as the priority investment area as part of the citywide framework. And similar to the Ashland project, we hope to work with DOT and other partner agencies as well as local stakeholders on the public realm needs for the Central Business District more broadly. Commodore Barry Park is an important city park as well, which is located along this Ashland Navy corridor. I want to take a moment to flag another active capital project by Parks that the board may be familiar with. There are currently improvements being made to certain sections of the park, comfort station being rebuilt, lighting for the ball fields, reconstruction of paths and sidewalks in the synthetic turf field, as well as some fencing and edge design along the sidewalk frontages. There are also plans for some of the future phases as well, including a multi-purpose play area. We're looking to identify physical and programmatic recommendations to better connect the NYCHA communities with the Central Business District and really advance ideas from recent planning efforts led by NYCHA, such as the Connected Communities and Open Space Master Plan. We had an introductory meeting with resident leaders last week at the Farragut, Ingersoll, and Whitman houses to solicit their input on planning needs for the larger neighborhoods and hope to engage the residents as well in the coming months. Here are some existing conditions near the three NYCHA communities. We're looking at pedestrian mobility needs, opportunities to enhance access to and from the neighboring communities serving uses such as schools, health clinics, libraries, parks. We're coordinating with partner agencies to better understand how we can support ongoing efforts and think of additional opportunities for improvements. For example, along the elevated portion of the BQE, connections to Commodore Barry Park and street frontages adjacent to NYCHA. This slide shows an active capital project led by DOT and DDC, which will improve pedestrian safety along Park Avenue and the Navy Street intersection, as well as some enhanced crossings to Commodore Barry Park with lighting and additional walkable space under the elevated structure. In addition to this, DCP is now looking at opportunities for mid-block crossings along NYCHA campuses. These can be super blocks with really long frontages, so looking at opportunities for added connections. The image to the right is an example of a crossing that exists today connecting Farragut houses to PS 307. We're currently studying this, and our work will require further feasibility studies in coordination with DOT. We are also looking to work closely with our partner agencies to really monitor and evaluate the current and future neighborhood needs on a range of topics. This includes housing, affordable housing, supportive services, open space, schools and education, public health and social services. In our early conversations, we've heard a lot about the need for youth programming, mental health services, etc. So really keeping that in mind as well, and other neighborhood serving uses, transit, and infrastructure. Jobs and workforce development is also an aspect that we hope to speak to in the framework. The recommendations will discuss planning goals to help ensure that local residents have opportunities to develop skills and access the kinds of jobs that are in the neighborhood, and especially in growing fields. In this slide, we have some precedent images of workforce and economic development centered projects. I want to spend a few minutes to go over some questions and requests for additional data that came up at the executive committee meeting in November. Members had requested a map of city-owned properties, which we've included in the appendix. There was also a question regarding AMI served in affordable housing located in downtown Brooklyn. We have good data post 2014, but there are some challenges with data from the early 2000s. So we're still working on this aspect, and we hope to follow up as soon as we can with the best available information. And finally, there were some questions about public and private sector jobs and median wages. We'd like to share some of that information today. Before we walk through the data, just to briefly touch on some of the ways in which we describe the data in these slides, the terminology used generally. First, when we describe job numbers, we mean the number of employees or workers. And typically, businesses are classified by industry sectors to kind of categorize them. And job numbers are then counted by industry. So some examples that we've included here are office-based, institutional, industrial, and local services sectors. The other consideration to keep in mind is that within a specific business, there are, of course, different occupations. So here we're noting the example of a hotel, which is in the accommodation sector, but the workers can include staff that range from managerial staff, receptionists, service workers, etc. There are roughly 62,000 public sector jobs that are either located in or headquartered in the greater downtown Brooklyn Central Business District area. And by this, we mean the area including Dumbo and the Brooklyn Navy Yard. At the last meeting, we didn't quite make this distinction about located in versus headquarters. So just wanted to kind of clarify that today, as some of these jobs are attributed to agency headquarters and therefore may include workers employed throughout the city. For example, transit or utility workers, and some other jobs are located in this particular geography. But all that said, the numerous civic services that are located in downtown Brooklyn serve the borough as a whole, and they continue to be a defining characteristic of the CBD as Brooklyn's civic hub. There was also a question regarding the specific types of jobs in the public sector at the last meeting. So here we've included some broad examples of the prevalent public sector jobs in the area. These include courts, local safety, borough hall, government offices, and agency administration headquarters. These could be city, state, and federal levels, public education institutions, transit workers, and city services, including parks. There are approximately 250 occupations potentially available to public administration workers. In public administration, median annual wages can range anywhere from $173,000 for chief executives to childcare workers at $27,000. This graph on the slide shows some of these occupations and the associated educational requirement. The darkest pink are occupations with less than bachelor's degrees. The bright pink are bachelor's degrees, and the lightest shade of pink are graduate level degrees. The dashed black line is the New York City median wage of approximately $62,000. Although many occupations span typical educational attainment, a bachelor's degree or higher is likely to have advanced annual median wages. And here's a closer look at some of these occupations and the associated median wage and educational requirement. We've included some examples such as employees in court facilities, office-based jobs, and transport workers as well. As you'll see here, there's a wide range of wage opportunities for different educational backgrounds. Moving on to the private sector, there are roughly 64,000 private sector jobs in the greater Central Business District area, including Dumbo and the Brooklyn Navy Yard. The institutional sector has grown quite a bit in the last few decades, and it's worth noting that nearly 30% of all private sector jobs are in the healthcare and education fields. This chart shows the private sector jobs in the office-based sectors in pink, institutional sectors in blue, industrial in purple, and local services in the light orange. The size of the circle represents the number of jobs within each of those sectors. The citywide median wage is shown in the black dashed line again. As you'll see here, most sectors with a median wage above the citywide median are circles to the right, which are predominantly in the office-based sectors. We hope this more detailed information on the types of jobs and wages in the public and private sectors is helpful, and we'd be happy to follow up if there are more questions about these aspects. This slide includes a tentative timeline for this near-term framework deliverable. We had an introductory meeting with the executive committee in November and have been continuing our work in interagency coordination since then. Today, we're seeking your feedback and we'll share the same presentation with the general board in early February with some changes if needed based on the feedback from today. And we expect to present the recommendations that come out of this effort to the City Planning Commission sometime in March. We really hope that this framework presentation will be used to support our continued public engagement with you all on the needs of the broader neighborhood. And we also want to come back and share periodic updates after the release of the framework on any progress we made to advance these recommendations. With that, I would love to open it up for questions. I can leave this slide up to serve as prompts for generating ideas, but can also flip back to other slides if there are more specific questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Manish. It's a very comprehensive presentation and a very comprehensive description of our, especially the central part of our community board. One thing that I remembered after, as you were describing it, and you don't have to really account for this. This is from Brooklyn Hospital was planning to do some work, especially on the Willoughby side, towards putting up a new buildings and new interior work. I know, again, that's Brooklyn Hospitals, but I don't know if you are aware of it or if you know if they're holding on it. I think initially they were going to take out the old office building that they had. There was an office building for doctors on the Willoughby side near the park. And that was going to be part of a new development. I guess it's probably still in the planning stages, but if you know anything about it, or if you know if they're putting it in this hold or developing it with you folks, I would appreciate it. Thank you.
Absolutely. We are not too familiar with the exact plans for the existing buildings, but we are aware of filed plans for an as-of-right proposal on the corner of Willoughby and St. Edwards. They're still in the process of kind of developing their vision for the rest of the site, so we don't have too many specifics there, but can certainly share as we learn more.
Okay, that's right. Thank you very much. Okay, I guess we'll use the hand up function, and I see the first one is our co-chair, Dorothy Kostarfin.
Thank you very much. Thank you guys for this presentation. I'm thrilled to see comprehensive thinking, that covers such a broad area in our district. I guess I'm trying to understand and process the information, but also understand how this framework will be implemented. Are you proposing a zoning change? Are we changing the zoning text here? What is this going to be a whole special, how does this get implemented? I guess is my question.
Thank you for the question. I can start it off and then Alex, please jump in. But what we're thinking of in the immediate term is for this to serve as a policy document that really makes clear some overarching planning objectives for this geography, especially the east side of Flatbush Avenue. And we hope that it will help us kind of advance key pieces of it in our conversations with relevant partner agencies on sort of a case-by-case basis, depending on which ones we're able to kind of take on in the short term versus long term. That's sort of where things stand now. That said, our thinking is still evolving. There's also this added layer of the private institutions coming up with their plans as well. So we're really hoping this document helps set some guideposts for their future plans, which will have to go through the normal public review process and early planning and outreach. So we hope that during their outreach efforts and engagement, this document can serve as an overarching sort of guiding principles resource. I'll stop there and I'll let Alex add to that.
Sure, thanks, Amrita. Yeah, we're really, I want to emphasize this, we're really trying to be very proactive here when it comes to not only the growth of the downtown Brooklyn Central Business District, but the anticipated growth of these two institutions. And so we know that they're coming down the pipeline, and so we're just really trying to be proactive here in advanced planning. We rely a lot on community district needs statements and the capital budget requests, but we really want to add more meat to the bone, so to speak, and hear from the community board, as Amrita mentioned, NYCHA, RAs, and the residents themselves of the three campuses, the business community and what's going on as it relates to market post-COVID when it comes to office and retail space in the area, as well as have a deeper understanding of what our partner and sister agencies are working on and where their goals and priorities are, so that we can kind of pull everything together in anticipation of additional growth of jobs and housing at this part of downtown Brooklyn.
I applaud you for that. And just one quick follow-up comment. It seems like in 2004, we had the big iron skillet come over us that created the downtown Brooklyn Special District. We're not going to get into what it was intended for and what it turned into, but it seems like this approach, which is, in my humble opinion, far more comprehensive, proactive, and positive, doesn't have enough enticement. I am an architect. I work in supportive and affordable housing. I build housing for people who have experienced homelessness. You don't do these great improvements and think about these goals if you don't have to, unless you're someone like the people in this room, right? So who have a predilection towards these things. So I just would encourage us to think a little bit more strategically about how we might encourage developers to take on these laudable goals that you've presented here.
Thank you, appreciate that.
Thank you.
Okay, I guess it's thank you, Dr. I think it was a very good point to make, and I guess that's part of what this forum is about. Now I'm looking next at the well, I'll tell you who I see next. The next three people who are on the little screen that I have, Mr. Lee, Esther Blonde, and Bill Flournoy. We'll go to Ms. Ali.
Yeah, thank you for this presentation. I think it looks like a very comprehensive vision, but I'm not sure I'm getting how each segment will be implemented if you're depending on the private sector to do their part, because city planning is kind of dealing with all the city agencies. And therefore, if it's depending on the private sector that have, meaning LIU and the Brooklyn Hospital, what kind of time frame are we looking at for any of this to be implemented?
Thank you for that question. And I think we can certainly follow up on how implementation could potentially happen and articulate that a little bit better. But it is going to be a combination of things. It will be public investments. It will be private proposals as well, advocating for changes through that. But definitely a combination. In terms of the timeline, we don't have an exact time frame yet, but we can certainly follow up with these institutions and get back to you to give you a little bit more clarity on that aspect.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, next I see Esther.
I just have a question. As part of this proposal, maybe it's Brooklyn, I don't know, is any entrance to Fort Greene Park going to be closed off? I know that Fort Greene Park from Myrtle, you can walk through and get to Willoughby. Is it Willoughby? Yes. Is that entrance, I'm hearing rumors that entrance will be closed off. Is that true?
No, we understand the value of that sort of adjacency and the importance of thinking very carefully about that Fort Greene Park frontage. There are no current plans for closing any of the entrances. And as I mentioned in the presentation, we are working very closely with the Parks Department, both on their active efforts, but also on potential future conditions. So we can certainly keep you in the loop as things evolve.
Thank you, Esther. I see the next person is Bill Flournoy. Bill?
Okay, thank you, Chair Gordon. This has been something we've been asking for quite some time, a comprehensive approach to development here. And I thank you very much for this presentation. One of the things I would like to suggest is that we do district statement of needs on a regular basis. If we could work hand in hand as a partnership to actually see if we can go forward with this, I would strongly suggest that. There are a lot of partners that we can reach out to who maybe have the same agenda as far as moving forward with helping the community and to redevelop downtown Brooklyn because I'm sorry, because there were things that were not done back in 2004 that we would like to see done now. And if there's any way we can work in partnership to do this, that would definitely be a good move. And as each step of each stage of this project goes forward, or this policy piece goes forward, if you include the community board in each one of those situations, it would be a good idea.
Thank you for that feedback. Thank you.
Thank you, Bill. Next person I see on my screen is Brian Howland.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And thank you to DCP for this presentation. As we can see on the slide, I understand the the different levels of scale moving from the site specific to the broader geography. You showed us, something intermediate, the Navy Street, Ashland Place corridor. But some of the items that you described seemed even beyond that, and in terms of the larger context of downtown Brooklyn and CB2. I'm just curious why these are being framed in terms of LIU and the Brooklyn Hospital Center, as opposed to a broader look at downtown Brooklyn and its environs.
Thank you for that question. Again, I think in the near term, because of these known plans and because of the scale of these two sites, we do think that's sort of a great reason, and gives us the impetus to start with that geography at the very least, and then start adding to it. Again, want to kind of emphasize the fact that downtown Brooklyn is the borough's central business district, and we really want to think about these two scales and constantly kind of have that consideration in mind in terms of who the users are. The local community is really important, but there's also folks that visit downtown Brooklyn. It serves a broader group of people, and we're trying to kind of address both those policy objectives. But Alex, I'll pause there if you want to add to what I'm saying.
Sure. Yeah, I'll just add that as Amrita mentioned, these sites alone are pretty significant in scale. They're close to 15 acres. And as they bring forward proposals to redevelop their sites, we want to make sure that we're clearly stating kind of policy objectives as part of these campuses. But recognizing the size and scale of those campuses and the impact on surrounding neighborhoods, we want to make sure that things like access to the campuses for everything from pedestrians and cyclists and vehicles and freight and how they get to those sites are going to be just as important about coming up with site planning policies for those campuses as well. And I do want to focus on the jobs thing, because one of the things that we heard highlighted is that from NYCHA residents was how can we connect to the growth of the central business district. And so that's both physical connections, right? That's how can people move through the CBD and to the CBD, but also the kind of the network and job kind of connections, which are less block by block and more about higher level policies. And that's why we're looking at the broader geography as well. So it's kind of a combination of all these things, but as Amrita said, the near term work is really about the 4 kind of city blocks for LIU and Brooklyn Hospital.
Thank you.
Thank you, Brian. Looks like Yvette is next. I think that's your hand up. It just comes out a little. I
That's
guess
my
the way
hand.
you're.
It's
Yeah.
It's a
okay.
brown one, that's why.
All right.
Thank you,
Okay.
Mr. Chair, and I want to
Yeah.
say this was a great presentation, and thanks to the community planning for doing presenting this to us. and giving us opportunity for feedback. I have two questions, and I think it was touched upon maybe already, but one is I saw the data regarding the jobs in the area, and I was wondering if you were planning to drill down into that data a little bit more in understanding how many of those jobs are actually employed by people in Community District 2, right? So like, there's one thing to have jobs in the neighborhood, and it's another thing to have people who work in their neighborhood, right? And so I think you kind of mentioned that you touched on it, NYCHA residents expressing trying to be part of the growth. And I think that's also being part of the growth, right? To being able to take advantage of those job opportunities. That was one question. And what was my other question? I can't remember. I guess I'm gonna have to I'm gonna have to
Well,
table it
when
till I
you,
remember again.
okay, hang on. All right, well, think about it, and I just want to ask Taya, are there any other people who have questions or one thing? This is something that's been swirling in my head since I now have you guys here planning. Is this? I don't know if this is something that can directly relate. But as you know, we're looking at affordable housing as a big thing that has to be done, especially for this board. And we know that the development has really put a lot of pressure on people who of moderate means. Now, and it was just, I don't know if this is something that this is a little bit out of a sort of a left field, do it, answer it as you will. We've for years and years we've had the Mitchell-Lama housing, especially I know there's a big set of Mitchell-Lama, or was a big set of Mitchell-Lama housing along Brooklyn Heights, going down towards Fulton Ferry. Now I understand that, and I've been trying to stay on top of the whole Mitchell-Lama thing. Now I know that some of them have been turned over towards privatization. Do you have any idea what's Mitchell, let's say with Mitchell-Lama housing? And I know there's some in our board, like I said, especially over by Brooklyn Heights. Where does it stand right now? Has it all gone towards some kind of possible privatization? Where are we with Mitchell-Lama housing right now? If you can answer it, if you can't, don't. But that's something that it's been swirling on my mind for some time.
Thank you for the question. It's not something I'm particularly familiar with, but we can certainly
If
reach
you're
out
not,
to
you're
HPD,
not. Yeah, okay.
to
Yeah.
HPD to see if there's a response there.
All
Alex,
right, maybe at
and,
HPD we'll have to
I actually,
get some answers on that,
no,
because that's
Chair,
something
I
that's
wanna,
yeah,
sorry,
go ahead.
Chair, I'll say that what we're gonna do is we've been in close communication with HPD as part of this like table setting process. We'll bring this question specifically back to HPD, and we can come back with more information. As I said, as Amrita said, we're still working on some affordable housing information. So we can add this to our queue and bring information from HPD about Mitchell-Lama and other affordable home ownership opportunities. Because I know that's been a question that has been raised before. So I want to make sure that we come back with HPD on that, and we can do that.
Yeah. Part of it's my own personal hit. At one point I applied for that housing over there. Oh gosh, decades ago. I did fill out the application. I sent it in. Never heard from them again. It just, but I was just curious. So I hadn't really kept it in mind. Although I keep hearing little things about just where it stands. The thing about Mitchell-Lama housing was that it was, especially when I was, as an older guy, as growing up, it was an access for people of moderate means to get a nice place to live, especially in this part of Brooklyn. I know in the Bronx he had it, and it seems to have fallen off the radar. And that's something I'd like to try to see if we can at least get some discussion on that, perhaps, and find out if the waiting lists are still there. If they're not, just what those houses, are standing right now, who has control of this things. But thank you for at least throwing it out. Okay, all right, I see names that are, okay. What I'm going to do is I'll stick with our committee people. I see one more from Bill, and I'll take.
Ms.
We're gonna go
Richardson
back
has
to
her
Bill.
second question. Sorry to interrupt you, Carlton.
Oh, okay. Oh, all right. Okay.
Thanks.
Okay.
Thanks, because,
Okay, your second question. Okay.
age will take
Yvette,
over and I'll
then
forget
Bill.
again.
Okay, do it
Thank you,
now.
Mr. Chair. I wanted to ask planning specifically if they've had some conversations with Brooklyn Hospital, LIU, and some of the other private institutions and had some preliminary commitments to following these guidelines. So I was just wondering what kind of commitments those stakeholders have expressed.
Sure. As part of our stakeholder outreach, we have been in touch with them about the ongoing work, but given how early it is in their planning process as well, there aren't any sort of public commitments or anything necessarily. This is still very early as they're still kind of figuring out future programming for their sites and the schematic designs and things like that. So we don't have that information currently, but can keep you posted. And Ms. Richardson, to go back to your first question, I do want to note that we can certainly follow up with more detailed jobs information. There could be some confidentiality issues with disclosing exactly which businesses are located where, but to the extent that we can give you a general idea of the businesses and employers in Community District 2, we will try to get you the best available information. Thank you.
Just to clarify, I think I was asking more the people who are employed by those businesses, whether they live in the community, right? Not so much who the employees are. So high level will be fine. Thank you. Appreciate
Thank you. We can
We'll
definitely do
also
that.
take a look at some of the commuting patterns, which if we can't tie it to a specific business, maybe we can look at in and out commuting to certain areas. And I think that's something we can try and pull apart. I definitely understand the question you're asking.
Okay.
We'll definitely get into that. And I'll reiterate what Amrita's saying is we're still very early in this process, but the goal is to find ways to work with LIU and Brooklyn Hospital so that having these policies public and out there early is a way to ensure that we're all staying coordinated on kind of the goals and objectives for their sites and the surrounding neighborhood.
Okay, thanks, Yvette. Okay, so we'll jump back to Bill has his second question, and I see Daughtry has her second, so we'll do Bill.
Okay, thank you, Chair Gordon. Yeah, I wanted to go a little further into the job piece that you're discussing, the policy piece. It's all well and good to know who's currently employed and whether or not they're in the district. For the most part, whenever we have individuals present to us, the Brooklyn Navy Yard, any of the business improvement districts, we tend to ask those questions. What I want to know is going forward, what jobs are going to be available? What do you think is going to be the policies you're looking at as far as the policy decisions you're making to create additional jobs for the individuals within the community? Because you mentioned how many jobs are currently here and what types of jobs they are. But as we move forward, how will we be able to also offer additional jobs, and what type of jobs will they be as far as your thinking in the policy?
Absolutely. One of the agencies that we are working very closely with is EDC, and together with them, we're trying to understand trends in the city. The existing conditions are kind of informing generally which sectors are growing. And again, the wages information is also really helpful to us. So we're hoping to use all of this to try to define more clearly of the vision for this area from an economic development standpoint. Alex, anything to add there?
Yeah, I'll add. I mean, the main thrust of this, the chair was saying it's a Eds and Meds TV show, and that's right. I mean, that's kind of the focus of these two campuses is educational sector and healthcare sector, and we know that not only is that relevant for these two campuses, but they're also what we've seen growing in the CBD as well. So to your question, which is excellent, you got me thinking about how to kind of do some data dives on this, is thinking about which sectors are growing, and then within those, we can pull apart maybe educational attainment that's necessary for certain portions of those, the kind of average wages you might see in those sectors, and start thinking through ways to tie those to residents in the surrounding area about what would be needed in order to for neighboring residents to have access to those jobs. And so I think that's a really good line of questioning. We'll take a look into that.
Yeah, Chair Gordon, may I follow up with that?
Yeah,
Okay.
go ahead.
You know, one of the biggest concerns we have is prior to 2004, most of the residents that were living here have been priced out. Okay, because they can no longer afford the rents that are currently being asked for in the area. So it doesn't help individuals to get low wage jobs because that still doesn't help them to stay within the district. So what I was asking also is, can we have jobs that are living wage jobs as opposed to, or jobs that have the ability to lead into living wage jobs? Okay, because I think that was the most important thing. Having a job is one thing, but having a possibility for a career is something else altogether. So I want to have a focus on that also.
Okay, thank you very much, Bill. I guess now I still see Daughtry has a second, more questions. Go ahead, Daughtry.
I just have an obvious follow-up to Bill's comment. He sort of got me going, but my comment is that we all know we need more housing, and we don't need the freaking $6,500 a month 2-bedroom rent apartment. We need real affordable housing. If you tie it to the scale of wages that you showed in your presentation, if those are the jobs that are here and that might continue to be here, we need to provide places for those folks to live. And we have to be aggressive about this. We can't wait for the developers with the good hearts to come and take a cut, to provide housing that people can truly afford. I would implore you to please use your tools and your leverage and your connections to all the other agencies and who you know and everything to get people to get excited about this idea of providing real apartments that people can afford. Just a quick anecdote that we did a little bit of our own research, and we discovered with the Furman Center that people in Brooklyn make about 57% of what HUD has established as the area median income. I mean, even in your chart, you showed about a $2,000 New York City median income. If you do the math on that, the rents are way lower than what is typically found in our district. And we need to use this as an opportunity to build more truly affordable housing. And now I'm off my soapbox. Thank you.
Thank you so much
Thank
for
you,
that
Daughtry.
feedback.
Okay, now I see other people who wish to participate. Before I do that, I just want to ask Taya, because I can't see all the names. Are there
Hi,
any
Mr.
other?
Gordon. I see Rosamund Fletcher from the Fort Greene Park Conservancy.
Right, yeah, I see that. I just want to make sure that we don't have any other board, committee or board people.
No other
You still
hands at
have
this
it?
time.
Okay, I'll go now. We'll take a couple of them from off board, so to speak. And Ms. Fletcher, okay, you can go ahead.
Thank you. So obviously want to echo the plea for affordable housing and the comments that it's great to see, a comprehensive approach and good goal setting. But, you are talking about this as a sort of recommendations. And I would like to know, obviously the growth of these sites very near to the park can have both positive and negative impacts. And so we're obviously thinking about that very closely. Having had preliminary conversations with the Brooklyn Hospital Center and understanding some of what they want to do there. So my question is, what are you thinking at all about, and is it an open option for you to create a comprehensive neighborhood plan and rezone? Going back to the first question, is this a eds and meds rezoning instead of a Brooklyn Hospital Center rezoning and a Long Island University rezoning. Is that what this is leading to? And I'd like you to just be open and honest about what your process is to determine that.
Absolutely. So at this time, what we can say is it's currently contemplated as 2 private rezonings. There are no plans for a city-led action. That said, we appreciate the feedback, and if that's something that the board is interested in, we can certainly kind of take that back as well. Alex, anything to add there?
Oh, that's right.
What is the process for it becoming a city action and becoming a city plan? What is that decision-making process? Because I'm being honest, I can see positives and negatives to that. I just want to know like what that process is. How do we get to it becoming not to individual zoning efforts, rezoning efforts, but a city plan? Is it just a, you know, that city planning decides to do that with the recommendation of, you know, the community board and borough president?
No,
What?
No, great question. So there's no one defined way to get to a city-led rezoning. I would say what the kind of the standard, if you could say there's a standard process, it really is about some sort of consensus about moving forward with a city-led plan between the Department of City Planning, the administration, community board, and local elected officials. I would say, as an example, we're undertaking a process right now in Crown Heights along Atlantic Avenue, which took, to be frank, quite a number of years to get to a point where the community board 8 and as well as community board 3, the Department of City Planning elected officials and the administration decided to move forward with a city-sponsored rezoning. So we're being frank, it's too early for us to say that we're doing this as a city-led action. I think part of the conversation is really just to understand where the private applicants are in the process. What are some high-level goals and objectives, and see if there is a consensus here that we can put out a document that says, you know, the community agrees on XYZ things, the department agrees, and the sister agencies agree on XYZ things. And if the private applicants move forward, you have to align with these goals and objectives. If it takes longer, then there could be an opening for it, but it's far too early to say anything about a city-led action at this point, from our perspective.
Thank you.
Okay, I think, thank you very much. I see Ivan or Yvonne. Eminem? Sorry.
Eminem. That's okay.
Yes,
I'm gonna
okay.
turn my camera on. Hi. So I've been trying to stew on this one question, and actually many board members have said it in other words, but I'm wondering, there's one specific piece, which is the Mayor Adams administration's current interest, especially in Midtown, of turning our city more into a local mixed use type of city. Is that sort of the direction that DCP sees this downtown Brooklyn area framework headed toward as well? I think a lot of our conversations are questions about jobs and good access to housing, and not compromising Fort Greene Park at all, is all part and parcel of keeping downtown Brooklyn kind of a local community and as mixed use and as complete unto itself as possible. That's kind of one question. So whether this framework is heading in that direction or is aligned with that. And the second question that just came up is about what we just discussed, whether this ever becomes a city action in the future. Since these things always take so long, to what degree is DCP exploring using digital tools and kind of more live data gathering tools in order to make feedback from the city more current, rather than spending a lot of time putting together a document that then within 5 years is outdated?
Thank you for those questions. Alex, can I ask you to take the first one, please?
Sure. So I think and correct me if I'm wrong if I'm misinterpreting the question, but I think the goal here is aligned somewhat with the mayoral administration and also what the state recently put out about a combination of goals, right? Ensuring that there's a post-COVID recovery in jobs and economic development. We know that there's a dire need for housing and importantly, affordable housing, truly affordable housing. We know that that's the case. And making sure that we have job centers closer to where people live. And so with those three goals, you know, the Eds and Meds work really aligns with all of those because it could potentially check all those boxes. And one of those things is the post-COVID recovery, and what we're uncovering in the data is even pre-COVID, is that the growth has really been focused in education, healthcare sectors in both the public and the private sectors. And that's something that we want to kind of leverage as part of this work, as well as knowing that there's housing opportunities here to support more affordable housing. There's very little mandatory inclusionary housing in downtown Brooklyn, and so there's an opportunity here. But also recognizing that it's difficult to move around in and out of downtown Brooklyn. And DOT has been doing a lot of work in this area, but we want to see if there's more opportunities to create a safer, more friendly public realm, meaning the streets, the sidewalks, open spaces. And Amrita had highlighted some of those opportunities as well. So I'm hoping that answered your question. If not, please you feel free to re-ask it and I can try again.
Oh, no, that was absolutely right. I didn't mention COVID, but yeah, all this comes out of like post-COVID realignment of city uses and how people move about the city. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. It's just to highlight that downtown Brooklyn is unique from other areas in that it serves both a local series of local neighborhoods, right, and surrounding area, as well as a growing central business district neighborhood. But as Amrita mentioned, it's also a borough and regional jobs hub, and with the Long Island Railroad and all of that. So we're trying to figure out how to balance both needs of both the surrounding communities and the communities that live in downtown Brooklyn, but also the importance that downtown Brooklyn plays for Brooklyn and Western Long Island, really.
All right, thank you, Eva. Karen, I noticed that
sorry,
you didn't have
and Amrita, did you want to do? I'm sorry, there was a second question. Do you want to do the second question?
Sure.
Okay, do
yes.
your question.
Thank you.
Thank you again for that point about making sure that the work that we produce can kind of live on and does not become stale. So again, at this stage, we're planning for a presentation to the City Planning Commission, and a video and a website presence is something that we can readily make available. But this point is well taken, and we have other divisions in our agency who are exploring digital tools and ways in which we can kind of refresh our information and sort of policy objectives for specific neighborhoods. So we'll make sure to utilize some of those tools. And at the very least, we'll have a web presence for this work in the near future. Alex, anything to add there? Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. All right. I noticed, Karen, you didn't have your hand up, but you did have a question about housing in general. I don't know if you want to just do it, or you just.
Sure. I'm sorry, I haven't figured out all the Zoom things, which is my fault. But it seems a little vague on how you're actually going to execute housing goals. I mean, how would you provide the affordable housing we need? Say LIU comes with some, I mean, actually that's educational, so I don't know, but they're two private entities. So I'm not sure how you're going to use your vague, beautiful plan here to actually get us affordable housing on the east side without a comprehensive rezoning or something that people actually have to follow. Otherwise, we're just stuck with ULURP again. And then we say we need it and they say we can't afford it and we're stuck.
Thank you for the question. I'll start, and Alex, please add to this. But at the very least, I think what we want to kind of note here, Alex mentioned this earlier, is mandatory inclusionary housing applicability at these two sites. So with any new growth and added density, there will be a requirement at the very least for MIH, which is more than the current sort of amount of inclusionary housing and the average percentage of inclusionary housing in the district, which is roughly in the 16% range. MIH on average will be in the range of 20 to 30% of the units created. We have heard feedback about just how affordability levels in alignment with people in the neighborhood, and that's something we're certainly keeping in mind, and we can take that feedback to our housing division and others who are working on citywide policy. But at this time, MIH is the tool that's immediately available to us. And Alex, anything to add there?
Sure. So you're right. We can only do so much on private sites. Mandatory inclusionary housing is one tool. We'll be, as I mentioned, working with HPD on different ways to access financing for private sites as well, so that we can drive down affordability levels. And then Amrita had a map up about public or city-owned sites, and that's something we're also looking at, where we have a little bit more opportunity for a variety of kind of public benefits. And so that's something that we're also exploring. What public sites are left in and around the surrounding area to do things like more and deeper affordable housing.
How soon would that be activated? I mean, is that like a very, like, can we expect to look at some sites and see some progress soon? Or is it just something that we're going to kind of put in a wish list or?
Sure. No, great question. So that's why we're working with a bunch of our partner agencies and downtown Brooklyn is kind of a case of musical chairs. And so we need to identify who owns what agencies' capital near-term and long-term needs are, and try and figure out if there's opportunities to use those sites more efficiently. So that's what we're doing, is we're working with sister agencies to do that.
Thanks, Karen. John Dew?
Good evening, all. I have been visiting downtown Brooklyn since I was a child. Downtown Brooklyn back then was a very low income community of color, and it is not defined as that today at all. So my question is, has there been a study done that analyzes what happened to the community that was displaced largely by city rezoning policy? Because the city now has the highest homeless population on record, and there is no actual plan that I have been able to see that would begin to address that. My other request is for someone to define how well MIH has done since it has been applied, and why has there not been a movement to change what is the affordable housing formula that defines how the city allows developers to affix affordable housing within their development. That does not in any way, shape, or form deal with the surrounding community. Thank you, Mr. Gordon.
Thank you, John.
Sure, I can take a stab and I'll pass off to Amrita or others. So the first question, so we actually have started diving in. We have a new data analysis tool called the Equitable Development Data Explorer, EDDE. And part of our work, both by the charter, requires racial impact studies, as well as we have a new data pool to understand change that has happened over time as it relates to race and income. And so what we can do is take a look at the area and try and do an analysis to measure that change. you're right, like it has changed significantly over time, but I think trying to understand the impact of a rezoning will be difficult, but what we can do is look at the broader neighborhood over time and try and show and identify what's happened. I think, so we can take a look at that and include that as part of our research. Let's see, Amrita, do you want to add anything to that?
No, Alex, thank you. I think that covered it. I can post a link to the tool in the chat and send more.
I would
information
appreciate
forward.
that. I would just also add that the change was marked after the 2003 rezoning of downtown Brooklyn. The change was markedly accelerated if it had started before then. I wasn't aware that it started prior to that. The upzoning is what caused the change, and the AMI application is irrelevant to most of the communities in which the housing is built.
Sure. We'll take a look. On MIH, mandatory inclusionary housing, we have it applied basically to any rezoning that has occurred since it was created. That said, we actually have relatively limited applicability of MIH, particularly in Community District 2. Community District 2 and downtown Brooklyn have a voluntary inclusionary housing program, which is based on an older version, it has a very low percentage set aside, and it's voluntary. So we have had a number of private rezonings which have applied MIH, and we can take a look at what's been built pursuant to that. But I would say in terms of area-wide, like neighborhood study rezoning, we just have East New York and most recently Gowanus. And in East New York, we're pulling the data now, but I think at least in the last round, the overwhelming majority due to the market conditions and MIH applicability has been primarily, overwhelming majority has been affordable housing at incomes AMIs below 80%, and I think actually lower. And I can get back to you on the East New York numbers. We're working on a summary right now. And obviously Gowanus is far too early to tell for what construction numbers have been done. So I do want to make sure that it's clear that we're talking about multiple layers of affordability programs layered on top of each other, some through the city and some through the state. What most people are very familiar with is 421A, which is a tax incentive program, which has pretty high AMI levels up to 130. And it's an as of right incentive. We recognize that that's very high, I'll be honest. MIH is at 80% and below, and it's permanently affordable and it's required. It's not a fix all. It's not, going to fix all of our affordable housing problems. We need to leverage HPD, HDC, housing preservation. But I just want to say that's one of the tools, and the thing is, it just hasn't been applied broadly to see the impact of MIH yet. So I just want to put that out there. But I appreciate that. We'll get back to you on the racial analysis and start working on the AMI numbers, because recognize that that's been an outstanding issue.
Thank you, John. Okay, Bill wants another crack. Okay, Bill.
No. I just wanted to, obviously we're going to be looking over the information you gave us, and we may come up with some other questions and suggestions. How do we get those questions and suggestions to you?
Absolutely. I can leave my email information in the chat, and Taya is, if Taya can kind of collect the information and email that to me, we are happy to kind of follow up with responses.
We can send questions to Taya, and Taya can forward them on to you. Okay, probably
that
that's
sounds good.
probably the easiest. Yes.
Thank you.
Okay. All right. Taya, are there any other hands up from either from us on the committee and the board, or otherwise?
Mr. Du, did you have another question?
Yes, I am wondering what impact has that recent influx of immigrants had in downtown Brooklyn, if any?
Amrita, I don't think we have numbers on DHS capacity for downtown Brooklyn. It's a good question. I'll I'll just say anecdotally, because we do work closely with DHS, I know they are extremely strained right now. We have a number of facilities where we're working with them, and it's all hands on deck. I think we can check to see with DHS what capacity is, and if there's specifically issues within the downtown Brooklyn area or community district too.
Absolutely.
And if I could just build on this particular item of affordable housing, because the word itself is so broad that it's actually been used to promote gentrification without question. How do we come up with a plan that covers all of the folk that need to have housing? We always are talking in a way that is restrictive and to a certain income level. There's a certain income level beneath which there is no city accommodation, yet there is a large population that lives within that restriction. So how do we get a citywide plan that addresses all income levels? Because the city has to pay for it one way or the other. They're now paying a large amount of money for every person that is in a homeless shelter or in any kind of that supportive housing. How much money would the city save if real housing was provided for that level of folk also?
I think we've heard that loud and clear tonight, and what we're going to do is we're going to do our homework with HPD and try and get back to you with some larger policy discussions and data on that. I heard you loud and clear.
Bingo. It's the first time I've actually heard that acknowledgement.
Okay, thank you. Bill, you're still.
Yeah, I'm
have your
just.
hand up.
Yeah, John, we actually had a presentation at the Economic Development and Employment Committee in regards to the asylum seekers. And it's actually cheaper to get people permanent housing rather than putting them up in a shelter. Much cheaper. So if you want to know the details, just check the YouTube what's called recording, and you'll see what we're talking about.
Okay. Thank you, Bill. Taya, any other hands up on this? If
I don't see any, but neighbors, if anyone's having any trouble with the digital hand raise, feel free to just come off of mute and ask a question now.
I'll wait a moment and I guess we've really talked this one. And all right, well, thank you, everyone. And thank you, city planning people. If you want to stick around, I'm going to get you the rest of the agenda because I'm going to be sliding over into the chair's report, which I have a couple of things that may or may not be of interest to you. If you want to go home and get offline and get your beer and sandwich, you're welcome to. If you want to stick around for a moment, you're welcome to. Okay, I'm going to now move over to the chair's. Yeah, okay, thank you. I'm going to move over to the chair's report right now. Because I think a couple of things that I've come across that I think that may be relevant to what we've been talking about. This past Sunday, the real estate section of the New York Times did a very comprehensive national report upon home ownership by African Americans, how more African Americans can get home ownership, real estate brokers, and just getting into community. It's a national report, so it doesn't really affect us directly. But then it hopped on to, there was a second thing that came up also from the Times, but through their, on, I guess, the emails, the things that they send out, those newsletters. And it was something that really struck me. There is all right, I guess as you know, there are philanthropies that have money that distribute for various causes and things. throughout the city, much less nationally, but mainly in the city. And one thing that came up that they mentioned in this little thing is a group called the Brooklyn Community Foundation. Brooklyn Community Foundation, it works with a lot of the nonprofits that are in Brooklyn. And of course, there are a load of nonprofit organizations throughout the city. Now, we have, and the Brooklyn Community Foundation pointed out that we have about, let's say, 30% of the population in need, but the non-for-profits only receive 6% of the monies that these philanthropies and foundations distribute. Now, what I was thinking about was perhaps what we can do as part of the affordable, housing affordabilities is to begin maybe using some of these not-for-profit groups to try to get, let's say, smaller multiple dwellings, smaller houses perhaps, to begin to have their tenants see if they can afford, with some help, to purchase their properties. Because that's one of the things that's put pressure on people of moderate means, especially in this border. I know I've gone through this particularly. There's a lot of pressure on people of moderate means because they don't have the money, let's say, that the owners would have. And there's a lot of pressure because of the ownership, the demand for ownership, the demand for real estate, the demand for buildings, and especially in Brooklyn Community Board too. So I was just thinking, and I'm throwing this out as a possibility, perhaps maybe we can get non-profit groups to get, let's say, more of a slicer of the pie and concentrate perhaps on getting, helping people in smaller houses who are still sort of hanging on, especially in our board, to try to see if they can jointly purchase, sort of like a mini co-op, or like what I brought up the last time, like a housing development fund corporation, to try to see if we can get ownership by joint tenants or groups of tenants so that they can stay in the housing. That's just my idea. I'm throwing it out as part of the chair's report. And that's what I had in mind. Given that, that's my chair's report for this time. The next thing we have are the any old business or any new business that comes up. Is there anything that been brought up from committee members and board members? Hearing none, we'll go over to the open for community forum. Again, although a lot of people from the community have already participated, but are there any other things that who are people who are not in the board or not on our committee who wish to bring up as a part of this evening's talk? Although we did talk a lot.
Well, Mr. Gordon, this is John Doe again.
Okay.
All the good information that was discussed this evening, there is a substantial amount of follow-up that awaits the committee and the board to analyze. It would be helpful if we have some understanding of the timeline it will take for all of the relevant agencies and parties to get back to us so that we can continue a coordinated approach to addressing affordable housing. I would just like to add that from my perspective, the 2003 rezoning of downtown Brooklyn was the beginning of the city policy for the destruction of affordable housing that is affordable by most in the city of New York. So I think we at Community Board 2 have an obligation to aggressively address a problem that was started largely in Community Board 2, but we were not, of course, informed enough to understand to demand a better formula, for example, for AMI. And so that AMI formula of over $100,000 salary in order to live in these houses is clearly responsible for the homeless population that we are trying to take care of today. So I'm just asking that Community Board to be very active in this particular initiative, because in certain realms, we were the beginning of this large citywide homeless problem. Thank you.
Thank you, John. Are there any, from, let's say, anyone wishes from the community itself? This is now community forum. Anybody who's not on the board or not in our committee who has any thoughts or something they wish to contribute?
Mr. Gordon, I see hands from Judy Stanton and Bill Vinicombe.
Okay. Ms. Stanton, go ahead.
Unmuting myself. And I thought the presentation was somewhat disingenuous. I thought Karen Johnson and John Dew's remarks were spot on. John is absolutely right that the beginning of the end for us in terms of affordability potential happened with the upzoning. I think many of us, yes, we weren't informed enough about median income levels or whatever it was John was trying to stay. I'm not correctly repeating you, John, but we all knew that this was not going to be a downtown business district or the third most important downtown business district. We knew that these big, tall buildings were going to be residentially occupied. And so I find it hard to believe that the people who were presenting to us are not aware of this problem. And yes, they just said they'll get back to us, but I don't have much hope that we're going to hear anything new.
And I guess we could bear in mind that even though it's we have, let's say the combination of Brooklyn Hospital and Long Island University, which would require people being sort of on site, there still is a greater post-COVID trend now for people to be doing how we're doing it, working from home. So the demands for office space, even though it was the demands for business to gather in a place, is not the way it was before, prior to the pandemic. So that's something that we can keep in mind as well as people come to us and say we need to open up whatever, they're asking us to approve. But yes, I think it's something, we should bear that in mind. Thank you.
So do you think the employees who are going to be coming in with LIU and Brooklyn Hospital, do you think they can afford the prices that are currently governing the market in downtown Brooklyn?
That's one of the things. That's what Bill Flournoy was pushing, because we're very concerned that they cannot afford, that they may not be able to afford. The people who work for LIU, the people who work for Brooklyn Hospital may not be able to afford to stay. Those who are in our, let's say our district, much less in the immediate areas, this part of Brooklyn, would they be able to stay and do it? We don't know. That's something that, again, Bill Flournoy's choice was pushing, and I agree with him on that.
Right.
Okay, Bill Vinicombe. Yes, haven't seen you in a long time. Thank you, Bill. You've come back from a long. Bill Vinicombe used to be a big shot on this board back in the days of.
I wouldn't use that word, big shot.
Of regular telephones. Put it this way.
It's good hearing, seeing some good some faces and listening to the voices.
Yes. Thank you.
I found the presentation very, very meaningful. I just want to bring something to to your attention. I think you all know about this, but it's more around some landmarking in our community board. So on Duffield Street between Fulton and Myrtle, we all know we have a number of landmark sites. We have 277 Duffield, which we've been community board's been actively over the years. That designation talked about led into the Abolitionist Place initiative. So that building is still there right now, and that has some history. There's also 4 buildings in Metro Tech that this community board worked on in 1990 to have moved from Johnson Place, or now Tech Place. It's basically where the fire department headquarters are. They were moved in 1990 onto Duffield Street next to the St. Boniface Church, and they are designated as landmarks. They were moved by Ratner. We all know, some of us know what that name is, and then was owned for a while by the developer, and recently was sold in the last month or so. They still hold the designation. I'm not sure. I'm sure you've walked past those. There's 4 of them. There's 2 brick buildings and there's a wooden building. They do have some significance in the area. They were right across the street from the AME Church, which is a very important historical church in our area. That church is now the Polytech Student Center, but that has, and I'm not a historian, and I wouldn't give it any justice to get into it, but if you, for all of us that know about that church, it's very, very important to our community. It goes way back and was very much part of the Underground Railroad initiative. So these 4 buildings right now have kind of run down. There is a obligation by the owners to keep them up to a landmark status, but they really are kind of falling apart. When they were moved, the 2 brick ones were moved together, and the 2 wooden ones were moved separately. So it's a beautiful little spot, and it has a lot of significance. It's kind of an example of the past. I just want to bring some attention to it because I don't know much about the new owner. It was sold recently. There was just some stuff in the press regarding it being used for affordable housing and developed. I'm not sure what that means, but I just want to, and I know you know about this because I know you all have spent a lot of time keeping your eyes on things. But I just want to draw some attention to it because it's very current, and they are looking a little, there's some graffiti on the front of one of them. They're kind of, falling apart a little bit, and I just feel like they're very, very vulnerable and may need our help at some point in time.
Bill, this is Judy. Can you get access to the roof condition? I mean, that's the one thing that will really get the Landmarks Commission's attention. If the board wanted to write a letter saying that we're concerned about the maintenance of particularly the wood frame buildings. They're very vulnerable. We can't see the back, but I would imagine there are gutters that might or might not be in good shape. I mean, I'm speaking from the experience of 135 Geralman, where we did get the Landmarks Commission to start to threaten to bring action against the owner who wasn't maintaining the building. In this case, I don't know who the owner is, and we don't know what their intentions are, but to get the Landmarks Commission's attention early on is a smart thing to be doing. And isn't there a neighborhood association that you're part of that?
Well, it's part of Metro Tech, so it's not, I do live on Duffield Street, as many of you know, but it's actually Duffield Street extends over into Metro Tech, so that is part of the Downtown Brooklyn Partnership, and I plan on doing some other conversations with some of the other people. But to your point, Judy, last year a pipe froze in the building, and it was an ice waterfall. There was water. There's ice all over the place. So, they're very fragile. And this community board came up with the idea to move them. If it wasn't for this community board, those buildings had been torn down. It was eminent domain. People were moved
Mm.
out. We lost those 4 buildings. The one building was owned by the Johnson family. The Johnson family farm went all the way down to the water at one time. The AME church was a African-American church that had their first, they
Yeah,
used to have open services down on Sand Street. They moved there. That church still in existence, but it's not in the neighborhood. But there's so much history there that if we lose it, we're fortunate to have those buildings there today. Because if we lose, and this community board is the one that did it. If this community board
Yeah.
didn't,
What year was that, John, Bill? What year was it?
1990.
Okay.
It was part of the Metro Tech, and Jerry Ranzini was the chair at the time. And part of the Metro Tech zoning, we worked with Polytech, and we all know the early players on, was to move those buildings and preserve that. And now that it's been, it was under the developer for a while. The developer didn't do anything with them, but basically they've been sold on the market now. You could all read about it. I think it's $10 million, and it was quoted in Brownstone. The new owner claims they're not going to be torn down. They're going to be used for some kind of affordable housing. I don't know what that means, but I just want to bring it to your attention tonight. So maybe.
Well, I think maybe Taya could send a letter, or maybe Lenny, I don't know, or Carlton. Anyway, the chair, someone's from.
Yeah,
they're not used to hearing from us in this format. I think it might wake them up a little bit to subtly hear.
I just want to bring one more thing to your attention. In the news recently, there's been a couple of situations where there's been landmark designated buildings. I think one was recently in Crown Heights, where the owner went out and got a demolition order from the New York City DOB, and the DOB never spoke to the LPC, and the building was torn down and lost. So I'm not saying this has happened. I'm not trying to be an alarmist at any point, but they are very, very vulnerable. This community board moved them. They sponsored in 1990 to do so. I have some wonderful pictures of them moving them down the street. They had to take the lampposts down and do things like that. But I just want to bring it to your attention. I know you're all advocates of landmarks. We have a great landmark committee. You all spend a great amount of time reviewing and doing the right thing for our community. And we have examples of that in preservation. But I think we owe it to ourselves to not let this go by the wayside.
Well, I don't know, maybe somebody should bring it to the attention of Historic Districts Council. They might move faster than maybe 2 would. I think it's definitely, as Karen said, not good news to see that this is a foreign-owned LLC that has possession of these buildings. Can you tell me the addresses again?
They go from 188 to 182. There's 4 buildings. The church is 190, and then they go 188 to 182. There's 4 of them, and they have historic significance. Otherwise, they wouldn't have been landmarked. I mean.
Okay, and this next question is ignorant. What's the street?
Duffield.
That's what I thought you said. Okay, it is.
It's the same street that the 227 Duffield landmark that everybody worked on for a long time, and which came to a abolitionist place. I mean, it's all part of that history, and we can't lose it. This is
no, I hear you.
People that
we know. Well, we don't have very much information. I mean, we've only been getting dribs and drabs recently, and hearing that yes, those buildings were sold. In fact, we were not certain of their landmark status. Part of it is because they were moved, which is unusual for landmark housing. I mean, I'm glad it happened, but we were not even certain of their status. Perhaps we may suggest like I said, perhaps at least a letter from the community, from the board, to Landmarks Preservation, asking that these places be preserved, at least taken into account. But we don't know who is the owner. We usually only react because they're making an application to Landmarks Preservation, then Landmarks Preservation then comes to us with the recommendation as to what they want to do with it. It's kind of we're in a very odd situation on this one.
I'm all I'm here for is just to bring it to your attention.
Yeah, no, I know, it's a, it has been, it was briefly discussed at a previous board meeting. And now we're going to try to, perhaps we will have to, ask that, maybe we'll bring it up at the next, meeting, if, to see that a recommendation should be made that the, that the board send at least a letter to Landmarks Preservation that these places should be preserved, this particular row of buildings. I know I've passed it, it's empty, it's an unusual situation. We don't, we weren't even quite certain of their landmark status, because they were moved. Normally, they stay in, Landmark House stays in the same place. And it's suddenly, it's in a different place. But yes, I think that's something that I think probably we'll probably have to do this at the next meeting.
And to,
I don't know that it can wait. I think we need to do something faster.
and I link back to John Dew's points about what the neighborhood was and what it is now. And what has gone, we've lost. But this is something we could hold on to, and we can move forward with the history of it and make it something. It's called Abolitionist Place. These are part of that. I mean, I'm not a historian.
Yeah, well, abolition's on the other side, of course.
Well, yeah, but the same street.
Chair Gordon, can I make a suggestion?
Yeah.
Because this is supposed to be just a forum, and we've gone into a committee discussion.
Yeah.
Okay. Can I make a suggestion that if this is a topic that the committee wants to discuss, that we make it an agenda item for the next meeting?
I'm gonna make them, I'd rather make a motion now that we reach out to the Historic Districts Council to take, well, I could do that without needing a motion. I'll just do that on my own.
But I would second you, Judy, if you did.
Okay, I mean, we just need to formalize this. We can't wait until the next meeting.
And I would vote in favor.
Mr. Gordon, I would agree with both Bill and Judy. We should move along, but we should also formalize the committee's intent. So, Mr. Gordon, if you would like to entertain a motion, this would be a good time to do it.
Motion was already made.
Here. All right, well, let's formalize it. Is there a motion that, now, do you want, I think it's going to the Historic Districts Council that's a private organization.
We don't need a motion to do that. I can just do that on my own.
Yeah,
and
that we don't need.
Explain that it was discussed. But if you want,
yeah.
if the community board is going to do anything formal, it needs to do it faster.
Yeah, I think it should go. We'll look for motions. Okay, I'm looking for a motion that the board.
All right, I move
Yeah,
to the committee should make a recommendation to the chair of CB2, have a letter written to the chair of the Landmarks Commission, to the chair, bringing her attention to the recent sale of these properties and our concern based on their condition, and this letter would have to be accompanied by some photographs, based on the condition and the unknown ownership, that the commission, I guess, bring its attention, have the, I don't know how the commission would formally do that. I'll discuss that with HDC, whether they would send somebody out to take a look at it, but I think it should be on their radar in some form. So that's what the substance of the letter would be.
Okay, we have a motion, and we have, I think, Daughtry said she'd second it. Yes, hello?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, we have a second. Okay. Any discussion, further discussion on the motion?
Yeah, Chair Gordon?
Yes.
Okay, so the language is kind of vague, but I believe what you want to do is have them review the condition of those buildings to see if they're in need of repair.
That's right.
That'll be part of it. That'll be part of it.
Yeah, because just for clarification purposes, why we are reaching out to them.
Ms. Stanton, could I?
You know,
Ms.
this might be a borderline demolition by neglect. I haven't gone over there to look at it. It would be very useful if we had somehow had access to the back where the gutters would be. I don't know if Bill, if you know anybody, how one would get in
The
there?
access,
I mean,
the access to the back is from the church. You can see it from the back of the, from the church.
well, does anybody here have a connection with the church?
I do.
To be,
I'm a trust.
okay, then you would ask to go in there. You would ask specific, say you're concerned about the condition of these buildings and would they mind letting you in so you can go to the back and look at the back
I can work that out.
and take photos?
Mhm.
That's what Otis Pearsall and I did with 135 Derelman Street. That was really what got the LPC's attention. It was in very bad shape in the back.
Okay, I just want to wrap this up, if I may propose. I don't know if everybody's watching the chat, but Taya brought up a great point, which is that if we could get together an action report, which is basically outlining what we would like to happen, we can bring it to the full board, but we have to do it within by next Friday, the 27th. I'm happy to go there and take photographs. Bill, I could meet you there and take photographs, and we could write a draft and send it around.
Okay, thank you very much.
Sounds good.
What are the give me the address buildings again?
It's 188 Duffield. I mean, just sorry to interrupt, but it's considered one, they're all in one tax lot and they all go by 188 Duffield.
Do we need a vote on this, or since we have the motion?
Yes.
before- Yeah.
Yes, since we
Yes.
motioned and yes, and that's what I was about to do. I was trying to get to, I think we discussed it. All in favor of the motion? I guess raise your
Aye.
hand. I guess
Aye.
we did it. Aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? No, great.
No opposition. How many is that, Karen?
We have everyone except Ernest, I believe. I'm sorry,
11.
yes, I haven't checked who's still here, but yeah.
Okay,
11.
1100.
Ted, may I ask you a question? Sorry, Mr. Gordon, may I ask a question?
Yes, go ahead.
Ted, does this have to go before the full board at the executive committee meeting?
It depends on timing, and just to double clarify, that's 12:00. Let me
Okay,
check the schedule 1
12:00.
second.
1, 2,
Okay,
4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10.
We've missed the calendar for the January executive committee, so the next available opportunity is the February 8th general board meeting. So we would need the action report to be done by next Friday. I'm happy to work with you all to get that done.
Well, thank you all for listening.
okay. All right, I think you got what you wanted, Bill.
I think it's what
All
we
right, so
all
at
want.
least we'll get a letter out there. We'll get something, at least that they know that we're interested and we voted on it. I think we've done our new business. At this time, I'm going to ask for the meeting to be concluded or adjourned.
Motion to adjourn.
Yeah, thank you. All right, I think we did a lot of work tonight, a lot of discussion. Thank you very much. We'll stay in touch on this matter. I know this, and I guess, yeah, Taya will be sending stuff to the committees as to just, who we're addressing into and how we'll send it up the chain of command. Thank you.
Thank you.
That's it.
Night.
Night all.
Thank you.